Great. So welcome everyone to today's session that NTAC, the collaborative, is putting on for y'all. We want to welcome state leaders today, and I'm actually going to turn this over to my colleagues, Ruth Allison and Jackie Hyatt.
Thanks, Michael. Just go ahead and advance to the next slide. And if folks just want to quickly introduce themselves, we have a number of NTAC folks that are going to be talking today. I'm Ruth Allison, and Connor, you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you, Ruth. My name's Connor Archer. I actually represent the main team as well, but also serve on the on Yeti youth on our youth group. So very honored to be here, and can't wait to share about those updates later on. And I'll pass it to Jennifer.
Thanks, Connor. Hi, everyone. My name is Jennifer Coyle, and I'm happy to be here with all of you wonderful state team leaders. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, everybody. I'm Caroline McGee. It's great to see everyone.
Hello, everyone. My name is Brianna Parra. Also excited to be here.
And I'm Michael Storr, also from NTAC, the collaborative, and welcome everyone. Thank you.
All right, we'll go ahead and go to the agenda. So we're excited to be with all of you today to discuss the upcoming in-person Capacity Building Institute. We're so excited that it's going to be in person. And various members of the NTAC team will be sharing information about the CBI. Its different components, really how best to prepare your team so you can get the most out of your time at the CBI, as well as those important dates to remember, like your last day to register or get your hotel room. We're also thrilled and very excited that throughout our 90-minute conversation today, we're going to hear quick updates from states on the progress you all have been making on the implementation of your CBI plan. We actually have 3 rounds slated for state teams to provide updates, and know, just like us, you all are looking forward to hearing from each other in the great work that's occurring across the country on behalf of students and youth with disabilities. So I think with that, let's get started. And Jackie, you want to share a bit about the purpose of the CBI?
Yes, thanks, Ruth. So just to go over the purpose of the CBI, and we're going to be in person, which is so excited. It's really, the focus is to increase your knowledge of effective transition practices overall. Through using that relevant data to reflect on current practices. So we'll share a little bit more about how that can happen, update or develop your interagency state plan. So we're really focusing on that interagency work that we do together, developing new partnerships with other states and entities. There'll be time to connect, and we've seen in networks how effective that can be too. And of course, have fun, because we will be in person, right? So that'll be great.
The CBI is just one piece of NTAC's capacity building model. We know to effectively implement a strategic plan and for systems to really change, there needs to be an ongoing process in place for your interagency teams to really collaborate and coordinate services to students with disabilities. So though the CBI is that concentrated time for a state team to come together to evaluate, talk about what's working, what needs to be tweaked, et cetera. We also just want to continue to remind you that we offer supports throughout the year that we encourage all states to access to help further build capacity and help implement your plan. And just a reminder, we have 3 levels of TA, and we're fond of saying there's no wrong door. We like to connect with states at all 3 levels, but that universal is kind of take and use. It's like our webinars that we hold on a monthly basis, as well as our website. Then we have targeted, which is more coach, has some coaching attached to it. So it could be a community of practice or our short courses. And then we have a number of states, many that are on here today, that are accessing our intensive technical assistance, which is more designed to scale up different practices or sustain efforts. And as I said, we have a pleasure of working with a number of states on that. So Jackie, I think you're going to talk a little bit more about the CBI.
Yeah, just wanted to highlight, so our TA format that we've utilized for the Capacity Building Institute really is a hybrid. So it's a combination of an institute and a conference model. So bringing in time for you to plan and work together is along with gathering information, networking, bringing those new pieces to gather with your planning is really important. Also combining those conference elements into that as well too. So providing a format for learning and applying. And just like I was saying, it's like you're working hard together as a team during your team planning time, and you're going out, gathering new information to bring back to your team and to further flesh out maybe some needs or even some strengths that your state has, so that you can develop the best plan to go back and implement once you leave the CBI.
Okay, great. Thank you, Ruth and Jackie. And we're going to go ahead and move into our state updates on the goals. And those of you that were with us back in August, we had 28 states that presented their state team plans for 2022-23. And a number of those folks are going to share out today. So we're going to start first with the category of the topic of interagency collaboration and systems alignment. And just a heads up as we go through the states that are going to be presenting, just like we did back in August, folks will have 2 minutes kind of in this speed update round. You will see a little clock, not trying to freak anybody out, but we're just trying to keep everybody on track as we move through lots of information that's going to be shared today. So with that, first up is going to be Colorado. And Gail, if you want to unmute, you're on.
I think I'm unmuted. Can you hear
You
me?
are. I can hear
Okay.
you.
All right. So yes, we are focusing on interagency collaboration as a team. So our goal was to increase collaboration on the state team among agencies and entities. And we really have done a nice job of doing that through our sequencing of services work, bringing together state partners to establish a continuum of services across our state, and the establishment of interagency transition teams with local districts. So last year, I think we started with 3 pilot sites. This year, we added 4, and we are continuing to build capacity among teams around interagency collaboration and interagency transition teams. So that is continuing to grow as we are thinking about how do we scale that up for next year. Districts are really getting on board, even those that are not a part of sequencing of services, they are examining their interagency team collaboration. The other one that we have focused on a lot is around youth, mainly family training, and how do we build capacity around family training, making sure our families have the information that they need to navigate the transition planning process. We are our collaboration with our parent agency, I can't even talk about today. Our parent center is improving. They are going to be a part of our state team when we come to CBI. We are looking for ways to improve our collaboration across our system, so we're not duplicating work. And my time is up.
Alrighty, thank you, Gail.
I did not get through all of them, but
go ahead if you just want to wrap up your career ticket stuff that you're doing.
And so that project is also set to begin May of 2023. We have our district selected, and that work is moving forward for the next school year. So.
Great, thanks, Gail. Appreciate it. Next up, we have, let me get to the slide, Kentucky, and I believe it's Dorothy Jenkins. Dorothy?
Yes. Hello, I hope you can hear me.
We can, go ahead.
Okay, great. Well, Kentucky has been working on the priority areas within the program structure. We're working on the process of data sharing system between the Kentucky Office of Vocational Rehabilitation and the Kentucky Department of Education. Our program structures, we want to have consistency in our programming across providers and stakeholders, and our tasks and actions in order to complete these priority areas is to clearly outline the existing data that each agency has and the location and the ownership of that data. We're working on and looking at the mechanism of the existing sharing process that we have. And in Kentucky, we have the Kentucky Center for Statistics that actually collect and integrate the education and other data within our state. We want to explicitly define the data needs. We have questions, is wanting to know what questions do we have that could be answered by the data by someone else who owns that. And we have been working on meeting on a regular monthly basis and quarterly basis as well to increase the dedicated working meeting time for the existing work group members and including this work with our Kentucky Interagency Transition Council's work team. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Thanks so much, Dorothy, for your update from Kentucky. Next, we're going to move on to Maine, and let me get the slide up. And Titus and Connor, I'm not sure who exactly is presenting, but if you both want to jump on, you're on.
Thanks, Michael. And I'm going to present our state update. Titus O'Rourke, who's our state transition specialist, is also on the call. We have a lot of exciting initiatives happening around transition in the state of Maine. A lot of these you recognize are our continued transition activities. But we are continuing coordinating those activities and services through various workshops with adult education, CTE, and vocational rehabilitation, known as VR as well. Continuing developing tools to support transition beyond compliance. Transition, we have developed a transition hub business case that we have brought to different agencies in our state to really expand upon the current resources and systems out there in our state. We have collaborated also in the form of agreements with creating a regional program with 5 local schools, all within a certain radius of each other for an interactive job fair this spring. We're also working on a STEM related interactive experience with an organization called EduCirc, which is based out of Chicago. Very excited for that partnership. We've also continued to increase our shared understanding through collaborations with CTE, adult education, to develop that consistent messaging all across the board. And finally, and I'm going to spend a little bit more time on this than I anticipated, we have a report that we have submitted to our state legislature on creating and expanding services for youth and young adults in Maine, so that way it is a robust and accessible system for all. We're incredibly excited about all the work that we're doing, and we can't wait to share more in the spring when we're at CBI. Thanks for your time.
Great, thanks, Connor. Appreciate that. Next up, want to hear from Kansas and the state of Kansas and Stacy. So Stacy Martin, if you want to unmute, you're on.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Stacy Martin, and I work for the Kansas State Department of Education. I'm excited that we are a part of our Kansas Transition Coordinating Council, which was a goal 2 years ago. So we're alive and going, and part of what we wanted to do for a long time separately, but able to do collectively now, was to develop a survey, a needs assessment, to find out really what are the needs in the field of transition coordinators, special education teachers, supervisors, and paraprofessionals. And so with the collaboration work of our 8 agencies that we have on the KTCC, Kansas Transition Coordinating Council, and the partnership of the KU Kansas University grant. They took the lead on developing a survey with stakeholder input. Really excited to report that we have the results back, and we had over 600 responses, which we were really excited about that. So I think the hard part is with this now is to figure out the data, what we'll be able to do next in providing services and supports for teachers to support student outcomes for kids in Kansas. Thanks.
Great, that's exciting work, Stacy. Thanks for sharing that. Next up, if we could hear from our folks in Michigan, and let me just get the slide up. And Jennifer, if you can unmute, if you're on.
Yep. Well, hello, everyone. So really, when we're still talking about our plan with Michigan Interagency Transition Team, we really have a wide representation across the state of multiple agencies coming to the table. So right now, we are still, implementing the pilot and learning a lot from our ISD that we're partnering with with our model that we have created. Our next thing that we really have to look at is looking at that development of the student flow of services. In Michigan, we, can have, each school can look different, each student can look different. So we really need to establish what that student flow is going to look like across the state, and how do we measure and make sure that our students have outcomes that they want. And then, with CBI coming up, I want to say, our framework implementation has to look at creating that interagent or that ITA agreement. So we're really working hard on that. And to looking at sustainability, what is that going to look like across the state? Capacity, what is that going to look like? And then how are we going to be able to train at that local level and make sure that we have the resources out there for those local teams to be able to work through the framework that Michigan has created?
Great. Thank you, Jennifer. I appreciate your update. And we're going to head and move on. And folks from Minnesota, Alyssa, if you're on, if you can unmute.
Hi, everybody. This is Alyssa Klein. I work with, Minnesota Vocational Rehabilitation. I'm our statewide youth services coordinator, and happy to be here today. I'll have to say this. I have worked in Minnesota VR for over 26 years, and this is the most exciting time I have ever seen in the world of transition. We have what's called E1MN, Employment First Minnesota, which is our state agency partnership between the Departments of Education, Employment and Economic Development, which the VR programs are housed under, and then Human Services, which our waiver Medicaid programs are housed under. And we've launched this E1MN partnership across our state to align seamless services and supports for both youth and adults with disabilities. So in the area of youth, this fall, we launched a Youth in Transition Toolkit. And it is going to be, I feel, a game changer for our state, because it's this one-stop shop that professionals, which includes school staff, VR staff, waiver case manager staff, can all go to find information on how transition services can be provided seamlessly and consistently across our state. Also within our toolkit, we now have an interagency data dashboard that has information from our special ed post-school outcome survey, our VR data, and our Medicaid data to show how youth with disabilities are doing in the world of employment. So that is also really exciting. We have a work plan between our agencies where we're doing all kinds of things to keep this work moving along. And we're going to do a big, we're testing that toolkit right now, and in the fall will be an even bigger launch of that as well. So that is it. Thank you.
Great. Thanks so much. Appreciate the wonderful work you're all doing in Minnesota. And we are now going to switch topics And the next set of state goal updates will be updates regarding collaboration with the career tech ed, special ed, vocational rehabilitation focus. So we're going to hear from a couple of the states that have those goals for this year. So we're going to first start off with Indiana. And Ian, if you're on, please unmute.
All right. Hey, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ian Reagans, and I'm from the Indiana Department of Education. Our brief update from our Indiana transition team is that we have been working towards determining the best approach to ensure that our plans can really be integrated. So we're looking to focus on accommodations in our CTE programs rather than modification to courses themselves. So from this, we're working to identify how we can best support diploma track students with accommodations, as well as supporting our non-diploma track students through applied courses or alternative options. So as is the case with all new things, we have run into some issues of ensuring that we have staff in programs to support these efforts. So we've tossed around the idea of supplementing this with something like work-based learning experiences. So essentially like a modified apprenticeship program where students are doing an on-the-job experience, which fits into our current graduation pathways rather than creating an alternative course of study. So we hope that these experiences could perhaps lead to an endorsement or micro-credentials for those students on specific tasks within a pathway. So we want to be deliberate about what we're trying to do. So we did a data crunch and determined several career areas of interest. So construction, automotive, culinary, technology, veterinary technology. So a lot of different options there. And we think that there's a lot of options within these programs where we can flesh out targeted work-based learning experiences. So with all that said, I think we're sitting firmly between steps 2 and 3 of our plans. So this is probably our most work-intensive time. So we're going to solidify a plan to discuss our CTE programs and see if what we're proposing is something that those programs can support. So that's really where we are.
Great. Thanks so much, Ian, and the great work you all are doing in Indiana. And next up, let me get that slide up there, is Iowa. And Jeanette, if you were on, if you can unmute, please.
Thank you for having me. Jeanette Thomas, Iowa Department of Education. You'll see that our overarching goal was to increase the participation and concentration of students with IEPs and CTE coursework across our state. We wanted to take a data-driven approach so that we could get a better picture of what those participation and concentration rates look like. So we actually, it was very timely that we had the opportunity to participate in a equity-focused training that was done by Advanced CTE. It's called Opportunity Gap Analysis. I'll put a link in the chat for you all to take a look at that. And that really looked at digging down into your data. So we developed dashboards utilizing our state Perkins data, special education data, and the students that were participating there, our voc rehab data. And from those dashboards and the training, we proceeded to have some virtual trainings. We started out to kick this off, so to speak, with our regional ACTE conference. We held a pre-conference and we introduced the training itself, which was very interesting. We got some very good feedback on the functionality of the dashboards and some topics on moving forward. And we also uncovered some root causes that weren't really student related. We also were looking at what we can do in the future to keep this conversation going. So we're looking at perhaps doing some district cohorts in the upcoming school years around special ed, SDI, and CTE instruction. So we want to figure out how can we incorporate some of those supports into CTE classrooms so that students are more successful and they're retained within some of those courses and can complete the programs. And finally, we want to also look at expanding in our advisory boards. We have our core working group, but we also want to look at inviting business and industry, students, family focus, just to get some more input to kind of guide our work in the future.
Great. thank you so much for sharing the great work that's happening in Iowa. And just as a reminder, folks, I've noticed a lot of comments and questions in the chat. So as you're presenting and you're looking at that, if you can correspond with each other in our chat, that would be great. And unfortunately, I did hear from Lavinia Grippentag. She is under the weather today, so is not able to present. And I don't believe anybody else is on from Utah. I'll just give a pause. I didn't see anyone else. So please check out their slide. They are doing amazing work in Utah around the career tech ed, special ed, VR. Collaborations, but also in other areas. So again, setting good thoughts for a quick recovery for Lavinia. And with that, I'm going to pass this over to Caroline McGee.
Great. Thanks, Michael. So you heard a bit of an overview from Jackie and Ruth right at the top of the hour related to the structure and content of CBI. So you can see here, it's that hybrid that was talked about in terms of the delivery of content, really robust, rich content related to engaging students, youth, and families in educational and transition services, database decision-making, data use, sharing to improve programs and outcomes at the state and local levels. Attending to justice, equity, and inclusion in services to diverse populations of students and youth with disabilities, really looking at those collaborative partnerships and service delivery for ongoing recovery and retention. And then, of course, the provision of career and technical education, career pathways, and work-based learning experiences for underrepresented and all students and youth with disabilities. So that's the overarching framework within which we're working, and that's combined with that really important critical time for facilitated state team planning to work on those strategic plans, and then access to content experts, and of course all those wonderful opportunities for networking, and exciting to have an opportunity to do that in person this year. So a little bit about our agendas, and you're going to see some at-a-glances coming up here in a moment. So we're excited that we'll have our federal partners with us again this year, as well as our Youth Engagement Transition Initiative folks. And so Connor, we're excited to have you on, and others who will be part of the work and the content throughout the CBI. So we'll have the mix of the whole group sessions along with concurrent, and we're also offering some pre-institute workshops, and the next slide will give a little bit more detail about that. So our day one, we're packing a lot of fun into a full day. We will start off with talking about the history of the Capacity Building Institute with some purpose and foundations and framing of the work that will take place over the 3 days, and that takes place, we know, beyond the work of the CBI. We're offering concurrent workshops where we can really dig in to that content related to those areas that I just outlined a few moments ago. So 6 to 7 concurrent workshops, and then we'll have that whole group kickoff with our Yeti and our OSERS partners, followed by concurrent sessions. So lots of rich content in the afternoon, and then getting right into team planning. So the application to do the work with your interagency team members, and then followed at the end of the day with a resource walk and reception. So a nice networking opportunity, which we're also offering throughout. You can just move to the next Wednesday slot. Thank you. We've got a placeholder here for now, just to gauge interest around the potential for folks to meet in their peer networks and communities of practice. So we have some time carved out for that, starting right out with some whole group messaging and content, and then jumping right into the second team planning time, and then really providing, again, back to that, a more formal networking opportunity with some topically focused breakouts during a working lunch on our day 2, and then followed by more rich content. So 7 concurrent sessions, and then another team planning time for folks to gather. So really responding to the feedback that we received last year and how critical that strategic planning time is for folks. So wanting to offer those opportunities throughout the Institute. So that's our third time. And then our final day, we have a half day on Thursday, the 18th. And if we could just move to that next slide, but that day is going to start with, I believe we have, sorry, I'm trying to pull from memory here. Thank you. So we're starting with concurrent sessions that day, right out of the gate, offering another team planning time, again, to be able to tag team those content sessions and then bring that back for a final strategic planning opportunity. And then we'll have a whole group closing. So very robust opportunity for content and work with your teams, and also access to collaborating partners as content experts, other state team members. We know how important that is for you, as well as NTEC staff being able to engage and work closely with you throughout the CBI. Right. And then our next slide, I think we're jumping right into Jen.
Yes, we are.
Thanks,
Jumping
Jen.
into Jen. So Jen, you're on.
All right. Hi, everyone. So another component of our Capacity Building Institute is facilitated team planning meetings. And so if you could go to the next slide, Michael. This year, we're really excited to be back in person and kind of get to the historical look of ways facilitators and teams have, worked together through those team planning times. So if you're working with a facilitator and you can identify that need when you register, if you haven't already registered, you can indicate there if you'd like a facilitator. This year is going to be a little bit differently. The last couple of years, since we've been virtual, we have used a lot of our internal personnel as facilitators. This year, we will be using only external facilitators, meaning that we won't be using any of our NTEC personnel as facilitators. So for some of you that have had a NTEC facilitator over the last couple of years, we know that might be a little shift, but we really feel it's necessary to have our NTEC personnel available for content experts to come into your team planning times or to connect with you in other ways. So that's a little bit of a shift. Whether you're using the online strategic planning tool or your other planning document, you will use that within your team planning time, if they're facilitated or not. And then also another piece to the team planning meetings that we really like to focus on is making sure that you split your team apart to go to all of the different content sessions. And so then when you come back as a team, then you can share out, then just a couple of minutes from each person sharing out what you learned at that content session. That way everyone has a taste of what was, presented, and you can kind of work from that information if you want to use it in your tool. So now I think I'm handing it over to Connor. Connor is going to share with us the importance of having a well-rounded team.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jennifer, for that. And again, thank you all for being on here today. The importance of engagement with various stakeholders is key, especially when we're all trying to come together to revamp our systems, overall in each of our states. So having co-leads from education and VR, having team membership based upon current and projected goals and data. For example, if you have a youth or a young adult that is really into workforce development, and they should be a part of your state team. For example, Maine actually has a member of our team that we plan to have come down with us in May, who has great workforce experience and actually has a job currently in that profession. So really excited about that. Could consider which key stakeholders should be engaged as well. Be strategic, in that. And it's highly encouraged to engage youth and young adults on your team, and or even a family member. Maine has been doing a great job of this, along with many other states. And we, as Yeti, for example, the Youth Engagement Transition Initiative, we have some ambitious, but very impactful goals that we as a group have put together to support youth engagement in 2023. We want you to plan. It's important too to plan on having a discussion ahead of time with all of your new team members regarding what the purpose of this of CBI is and what the planning meetings and value that they will add to your team will look like. When I joined our state team, it was important for me to really understand what was going on, but also understand how we could make it easier for others wanting to join our state team moving forward. And another thing I would stress as well is touch base with your new team members during or after the team planning meetings to answer any of those questions in a calm but also understandable way. You can go to the next slide. All team members, and especially youth and family members, are most engaged. And I love this graphic that was put together, because it really resembles what youth gravitate to today. Feel like they're being listened to. Involvement is with a purpose. So youth and young adults feel that they are having an impact and seeing that impact. Being respected as well. Being part of that conversation that's occurring, not only in that setting, but beyond the setting. And like we've said earlier, we want these conversations to continue outside of CBI, back in the States, beyond just this year. We want these conversations continuing for years and years to come. Removing any sense of being judged as well. We want this to be a collaborative process where every idea is on the table and it can be considered, because we do live in a world today where the idea may just be perfect for what we're looking for, and what your state's looking for. Ask what their opinion is of a plan or what they think. Get their viewpoint, get their perspective of what they see could be a roadblock, could be present a challenge. Making sure that whatever is on your plan is accounted for, and be proactive, and make sure that the members are being proactive in that process, as well, and actively involved, and give them access and opportunities to be actively involved in platforms to support that. So Yeti, as we said earlier, we are working to recruit new members on state, on our team, but also for state teams. We want youth. We believe that youth on state teams has been very impactful. It certainly has been impactful in Maine, and I know many other states as well. So if you do have a new member that's on your state team, please reach out to Michael Soar. His email is on your screen. By March 1st, we will follow up. Yeti will follow up with all youth participants. And in general, if any questions you have on youth recruitment, you can email Michael as well. He'll probably have me get in touch with you as well, and happy to support that process as well, because we truly want youth involved in these initiatives moving forward, because they're our future. They're the ones that are going to be living well beyond most of us, and they'll be making impactful change for the bettering our world for the future.
Great, thanks, Connor. I appreciate that. We also are going to be supporting them throughout the CBI. So Yeti is going to hold a session during Tuesday morning, and then also Tuesday in the afternoon, and Wednesday as a follow-up with those young adults that are on teams. With that, we are going to move into our round two, and we're going to talk our next update regarding student youth focused planning. We're going to actually do a little flip order because folks in Georgia need to go first. They're kind of under a time crunch. So California will come right back to you. And let me pull up Georgia. And Georgia, you're on. So Elise.
Thank you so much. I'm so sorry that we have to rush out. We have
No worries. You're on.
Okay, thank you. So Georgia has actually 6 priority areas in transition, but these are the top 3 that we wanted to talk about, and we're really excited. For quite some time, Georgia has had a rather large self-determination movement and student-led IEP initiative around the states, but we've been trying to get down into that pre-K level because we really believe that transition begins with the first IEP or plan for a student. And for a lot of our kids, that's at the pre-K level. So we have been able to collaborate with the pre-K consortia, statewide pre-K consortia in Georgia, to provide presentations with them on how to engage their parents for the purposes of extending those self-determination in, activities into the home and thinking about transition at pre-K, because everything is a foundation that builds to what the students need to have and be able to do so that we can give them the best possible post-school outcome, and also presenting on those self-determination. We have been very successful in increasing the number of districts who are now including their pre-K classrooms in some type of self-determination initiative. Most of that has been student-led IEPs, which is our Aspire program. And the Aspire program, people were talking about district-wide, they really weren't necessarily talking about their pre-K classrooms at that time, and now we have more people doing that. We have also been able to increase our collaboration with VR and the school districts and trying to get them more involved with each other. And mostly we've been doing that through the pre-ETS activities. VR purchased what it was once called Virtual Job Shadow, and it's now called Pathful Explore. And we have been training our school teams to use the platform and to create a program for how they will build capacity by adding more and more students so that they are working collaboratively with VR. And matter of fact, that's what the next webinar is about that I'm going to, instead of just waiting for VR to come in. And we have been able to double the amount of kids who are using that platform from last year as a result of this work. And the most exciting part to us is increasing our stakeholders involved in transition at the state planning level. And we are going to be starting a youth advisory group. So far, the structure has already been put into place by the people who will be leading this initiative, and they're starting to get students involved, because Georgia is a very big state, and we're trying not to have it be one group talking for the whole state. We want to make sure that they're represented by regions, because we have training regions in our state called GLRS, Georgia Learning Resource Systems, so that we could have groups there, and then they would have the opportunity to work within their group and then send a representative to the bigger group, and then send 2 representatives to the state planning group, which determines those priorities for transition in Georgia. So we're very excited. So you will see us there at the Capacity Building Institute, asking a lot of questions of the Yeti group so that we can make sure that we bypass any barriers. And then finally, we have 3 professionals from the Institute for Higher Education who are now part of our statewide transition collaborative, and they are working on initiatives to get us more involved with working with the colleges and universities, in addition to our inclusive post-secondary programs, so that we can provide kids with the best information and parents on opportunities for getting into those institutions and accessing their disabilities office. And we've already started doing some presentations to districts. So I should say those professors have started doing that. So we're very excited about the work that we're doing in Georgia.
Great. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Take care. And we're going to go ahead now and backtrack a bit to California and go across the state. And Sue, you're on if you want to unmute.
Can you hear me?
We certainly can. You're on.
Okay. Thank you. Well, I feel like California is going through a tsunami of change, and I'm hearing it from other states as well. We are really looking at growing and expanding the California transition community. with local partnership agreements between Department of Rehabilitation and the regional center systems and those kinds of things. In terms of youth specifically, starting early has been a real essential component, and we're engaging pre-K and elementary education and looking at what a transition foundation needs to look like. We are really recognizing that person-centered planning and self-advocacy is essential. We are in the process of hosting a program called Camp Networks that engages students in developing self-advocacy skills and meaningful person-centered plans, and we're including peer mentoring in that process. We have been engaged in person-centered training statewide, and we are working with the California Commission on Special Education, the Advisory Commission on Special Education, to engage youth as a component of their leadership team. So the youth will be provided an opportunity to develop leadership skills. So we are really busy, and we are increasing engagement between colleges, the students in colleges and universities. And we are continuing to expand opportunities for all students. And that's it.
Great. Thanks so much, Sue. Appreciate your update from California. And we're going to jump down, and our next state to provide updates regarding their youth involvement is Idaho. And Randy, if you're on, you can unmute.
Yep, I'm here. Thanks, Michael. I'm Randy Cole with the State Department of Ed. I'm going to start us off and then pass it on to my VR counterpart to chat a little bit and brag about her programs. So kind of the big thing that kickstarts all of our goals every year is our Idaho Transition Institute, which is very much like the CBI that we'll be getting to attend in May. We bring in LEA and charter schools, and they have teams with VR, parents. Some students actually came this year, which was very exciting. And we're really promote interagency collaboration and that student planning to provide resources for students to increase those post-school outcomes. This year, we did have 43 teams create district level plans, and we'll be checking in with them here in the next month or two, but they're really starting to increase that interagency collaboration and increasing parent and student engagement and participation in the process. So that's kind of our kickstart. And then I'm going to pass it over to Allison, and she's going to describe some of those activities that have come from that.
Thanks, Randy. Yeah, so it was really great. We were able to share a lot of VR data with the school districts at the Institute, which helped. A lot of that in what we have known all along is the need to target rural areas. So we've really been focused on that, of really trying to increase and create the number of programs. And so we've been able to increase using pre-EDS dollars, a number of more rural work-based learning opportunities, as well as rural opportunities with Career Tech Ed. We have created other Career Tech Ed opportunities as well for some of our larger districts also, but each year we're seeing more and more and more. And with 7 seconds, I'll sign off. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Allison. And Randy, appreciate your update from Idaho and the great work you're doing there. And moving on, our next state up is Rhode Island. And it looks like Jennifer, if you can unmute.
I'm here. Hi, everyone. We have had a goal probably since 2015 on our middle school focus. We run a middle school cohort. We kind of started with we have a indicator 13 quality rubric, and every 5 years we specifically run our middle school IEPs through that quality rubric. And so that helps to kind of drive some of the training topics that we've had as part of our middle school cohort. It's more of a train the trainer model. We pull them together on a regular basis and have different focus areas. So our goal this year was to increase knowledge and understanding of self-determination to help build student self-awareness and self-advocacy skills. So as part of that middle school cohort this year, we partnered with Dr. John McNaught of Determined, and we were lucky enough that he came back in the beginning of the academic year and did a full day training, which our educators were very energized, and they just were really excited about the training. And so they went off, and I know a lot of them were using the one pager. We've had quite a few districts that have instituted some middle school specific transition events and are using some of the resources from Determined. He came back with Dr. Mallory Deardorff of Zero to do a virtual training, and then we have both of them coming back actually next week on Friday. And so we're hoping for some of our educators to share out how they've been incorporating the use of the one pager and other resources, and specifically to kind of talk about how they're increasing student-led IEPs. We run IEPs through that Indicator 13 quality rubric every 5 years. So we are hopeful that at our next audit, we will see an increase in scores on that. And I'm right on time.
You are right on time. Thank you so much, Jen, for exciting work in Rhode Island.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. And next up is Texas, and Elizabeth, if you can unmute.
All right, thank you. Yeah, so at the top of the slide, you can see the structure of our technical assistance networks. I don't have to mention again how large Texas is. The way that we divide the work is we have some technical assistance networks that are run through the agency, and then we have grantees who really take the lead on the work. So the transition network is led by the Garrett Center out of Sam Houston State University, and so we're working on a lot of great projects, and it sounds like similar to other states. I heard Georgia and California especially talking about the emphasis on early to exit, really trying to think about transition from earliest eligibility. And so some of the things that we're continuing work on are doing a landscape review of 18 plus programs, or 18 to 22 programs, looking at how are they connecting students with sustainable employment and access to continued learning through college and other learning opportunities. So really trying to get a sense of how that looks in Texas. And we'll share that out when we have that final report, and continuing our TCI, Texas Collaboration Institute, and which really looks at CTE, promoting CTE access, expanding and increasing that. And then having a CTE accommodations manual that's in development. And we have, of course, many other things going on. You see some other highlights on the screen about our RSAC, Regional Student Advisory Committee. That is all about student involvement, community of practice, and then coaching. And I have one bonus resource not included on the screen. I'm going to include the link to the next steps checklist. In terms of student planning, the next steps checklist provides a framework to develop skills for self-determination. So it's a great resource. It's now published, and the Spanish version will be posted soon.
Great.
And that's it.
Thanks so much, Elizabeth, on the update, the great work you all are doing in Texas. And we're moving on, and our next topic for state updates, is family engagement. And we're going to go ahead and turn this over to Ohio. And Amy, you're on.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. This is Amy Szymanski, and I am with the, the Ohio Department of Education's Office for Exceptional Children. Really excited to share our progress on our secondary transition plan, which is related to our 7-part learning session called Establishing Families as Partners in the Secondary Transition Planning Process. Yes, the longest title in the world. We have been working on family engagement for several years now, started with a review of policy across agencies on our state team, and have now moved to 4 regional cross-agency training teams who have just recently completed 6 local cross-agency trainings across Ohio. And we're now looking forward to really rolling this out statewide for all of our local cross-agency teams. I'm going to flip it over to Alex here as he's dropping a link to our It Starts With Families and our marketing video that we're going to use to really get the word out on these cross-agency training opportunities. Alex, do you want to jump in there and say anything?
Yeah, thanks, Amy. I put a link in the chat to our Ohio Employment First webpage that houses our It Starts With Families guide that talks about some of the additional barriers that families face when caring for a student with a disability. But then also at the bottom of that page is our video from one of our first teams to go through the establishing families as partners in the secondary transition planning process. Yes, that is the longest title, I can confirm. But there are 7 sessions, kind of a getting started and a ready to launch, and then 5 topical sessions. And Amy does a really good job of in the first part of the video, kind of explaining how and why and where this training started. And then we have great video clips from educators, parent mentors, our County Board of Developmental Disability, which is our local DD agencies, and then our VR counselor who all participated and talked about just having a training together in a cross-agency cohort and the content. So please take a moment to watch the video.
Yes, thanks everyone.
Great. Thank you, Alex and Amy. Appreciate your updates from Ohio and the great work you're doing there. And we're next going to look at folks and what the updates are from Pennsylvania. So Hillary, Jackie, you're on.
Hi, it's Jackie. I'll get us started.
Great.
One of our young adults who participated in the CBVI clearly told us that families are still afraid of competitive integrated employment, and we had to agree. So the first thing we did was create an outreach plan, and we invited families, youth and young adults to a group to kind of talk about what's the best way to get information out. And we decided there isn't one best way. You have to do lots of different ways. But they said the big thing is tell us how. You know, that like the way that we do it made the big difference. Next thing that we want to talk about is our team navigators. This was a group effort from our VR and education co-partners in this, and we created team navigators that are transition to employment and agency mentors to help our local education groups learn more about OVR and better able to connect with that. And we're also rolling out a youth ambassador position across the state that's similar to that, but it's a youth opportunity. And then we did Connecting for Employment, which again is a cross-agency collaboration between VR education and developmental programs using the CBVI model, it was virtual, all of it was virtual. It was rolled out in August at our PA Secondary Transition event, our annual conference. We created what we call our Connecting for Employment roadmap, and then there are videos to go along with that. This is all to help teachers in the field be able to better understand and then connect with families about what's happening in transition. So those teams met in the fall again, and they'll meet again in the spring, and we'll come together in the summer.
In addition, we've been working on statewide resource mapping. We have 29 intermediate units that kind of serve as kind of like local agency supports. And so we are using our IU areas to resource map using Google Maps. And we are also continuing to do a media push via our Transition Tidbits newsletter to get our website and any information that would help support families out that way as well.
Great. Thank you, Hillary and Jackie, and the great work in Pennsylvania. And with that, I'm going to turn this back over to Jen and more about the upcoming 2023 Capacity Building Institute.
Thanks, Michael, and thanks everyone for those share outs. It's really awesome to see all of the work that's going on. I am going to talk a little bit about the strategic planning process, which is another component of the Institute. Thanks, Michael. So a couple of the pieces of the planning process that we use at the Institute is, and we've talked a lot about that actually here, establishing who's on your team and who is going to have what responsibilities, in particular in the team planning meetings. So who's going to be the note taker, who's going to be maybe the timekeeper, particularly if you're not using a facilitator. And then looking at who the roles are, and do you have the right people, as my husband says, do you have the right people in the right seats while you're working within your team? And then part of the planning process is also using a planning document for those of you that don't use the tool or the online planning system. We have some exciting updates about that in just a second. And then once you have all that kind of figured out, those are things you can figure out before you come to your planning meetings. Actually, we recommend that. Once you get in your planning meetings, you're looking at your progress that you've made on your previous goals, which is something we also recommend that you do ahead of time. And we have a cool little checklist that we'll show you in a little bit to help you kind of plan out your time between now and May. But if you don't get a chance to do that ahead of time, you will do that in your team planning meetings, looking at what you've worked on over the last year, which from what we've heard, everybody's been working really hard. You'll start to identify any new goals or activities that you want to work on. And then when you're writing those goals, also, how are you going to evaluate and how are you going to get data around whether or not you achieved those goals? And we have actually another cool tool to share with you about how you can identify where you might want to start with your planning. So we have been working very, very hard. Many members of that work group are online here today. We've been working to adjust the planning tool to have a state planning tool. So if you're familiar with the online system, there is a state part and a local part. And those have always been the same information or the same question that you would go through to identify goals. So we will be rolling out at the Institute this year a whole brand new state planning tool that will have questions specifically for state teams. And those questions look very different than the ones from the local teams. And this is information feedback that we've had over many years about how maybe the state planning team doesn't really fit well for state teams. So for those of you who are on that have traditionally not used the planning tool, you might want to check it out. We'll be showing parts of that for you in the final team prep in April. We also have, and some of you may have seen it at the mid-year in November, we have the strategic planning pre-assessment that is ready to roll out for everyone. That will be in the planning system, but we also have it available as a Google Doc and we have it available as an Excel sheet. And so we will share the Excel sheet with you when Michael's going to send out like a little bundle of materials and the PowerPoint. And so we'll share the pre-assessment for you to use with your teams to get ready for the CBI in May. And we're going to look at that actually in just a second. So either way, whatever planning tool you're using, and if you're using the strategic planning pre-assessment, which we recommend for everyone to do ahead of time with your team, both of those can provide you with a roadmap through the Institute towards setting your goals. And so what we're going to do, I think right now, Michael, is there a slide after? I think I already said all of this, but the pre-assessment is for you to work on before before the Institute. So you can either do it as a state team together, or if you want to, you can distribute the Excel sheet to your individual team members, and then you can come back together as a team and share where your scores are. So I'll show you how that works. I'm going to take the screen over. Can everybody see the online?
You're
assessment?
good. You are good, Jen.
Thank you. So we will send you, we'll send you an Excel sheet and we'll have there's 3 tabs at the bottom that you can see. So this is the instruction tab, and it really just gives you some information about how to fill in the statements, whether you're responding yes or no. It also gives you some of the terminology that we're using within the assessment about state agency partners and state interagency team. You'll see both of those terms throughout the pre-assessment. So this is kind of your landing page, if you will. So if you go to the second tab, and I have other team members on here, Jackie, Ruth, and Bridget, Catherine. So if anybody wants to share, pop in with any comments or anything, please feel free to do that. So you'll see when you go to the second tab on the assessment, you have the taxonomy areas, and you'll notice that they're in a slightly different arrangement. So historically in the online system, we have had these in a different order. So student focused planning, student development, family engagement, interagency collaboration, and program structures. But we've heard a lot from teams, and we've done a lot of work within our internal team, and really want everyone to be thinking about their state agency team and how they can all collaborate. So we've kind of shifted things a little bit. You'll notice that, and so these taxonomy areas are also be represented in the same way in the new state tool. You'll notice that we've added youth to both of the student-centered taxonomy areas, and that will also be reflected throughout the new benchmarks and questions within the pre-assessment. So each of these statements are things that you will again work on as a team, or answer as a team, or answer individually. And so you'll come over here, you'll say yes. I'm just going to kind of click through these so we can see what the results look like. So this part, we designed it to not take a super long time. So you're going to answer these questions. So if this generally is happening in your state, we recommend that you say yes. If it's not happening, you would say no. And then there's also a place on here for comments. If you're working along and you just really want to capture your conversation or your comments that's coming out within your dialogue, either your internal dialogue or your dialogue with your team, then you can also capture that over here. And then you'll see over here on the side that your all of your no's have been tallied. If you're using it with individuals, you might want to also, there's a slot down here where you can put your name in. And then you're going to come to the third tab. And so you'll see the taxonomy areas and the total no responses. And then we've given you a suggested focus level. So current priority is where we're suggesting you spend your time when you're at the institute. And then deferred priority is something that maybe you're not going to work on this year, or that you're going to work on at a different time. Now, there's a possibility that all of these might show up as a current priority. And then those are conversations that you have as a team, knowing what you've worked on with your past goals, or what your data is telling you on what you want to focus on. But this is really designed to give you a jumping off point or a starting point for the conversation with your team and where you might want to focus your planning time at the institute. I am going to turn it back over, and I'm going to stop sharing. I'll give it back to Michael.
And I'm going to actually turn this over to Caroline.
Yeah, thanks, Jen, and thanks, Michael. So we talked a little bit about this earlier, but just dovetailing right into what Jen was outlining for your strategic planning process and that facilitated state team planning time. As we have done in years past, you'll still have access to those content experts, whether that could be ways we will help facilitate connections with other state team members, with our own NTAC team members, as well as our collaborating partners, which we're really excited. We're in the process of outreach to folks to be able to share some resources and knowledge and just be, potentially on site. And so that's going to go right into the next slide for those networking pieces. But we will be offering a resource walk and reception on our day one, Tuesday, right after we wrap with our sessions. So that'll be an opportunity to do some more of that networking with each other, connect on resources, connect with content experts and just friends and catch up. So we'll have that for everyone at the end of the day, Tuesday. And then also we're forecasting ahead to continue the conversation as we did last year with a late summer celebration. So getting to hear your progress and these milestones and all the good work that's happening, providing those opportunities for us to join together and connect with each other. So more networking via a summer celebration, and date to be announced. So that'll be coming up soon as well as we start to think about that, forecast for that.
Great. Thanks, Caroline. And we're going to move on to our last set of state team updates. And this next section is looking at states that had a goal of working with students with complex support needs. And we're going to turn this over to Arizona. Whoops, sorry, to Arizona. And Anna, you're on.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can.
All right, thank you so much for having me. I am Ana Nunez. I'm the lead secondary transition specialist over with the Department of Education here in Arizona. And the CBI team here is focusing on two main concepts, which is career technical education and pre-employment transition services. We are approaching it with like a general sense of affecting all students with disabilities, but we also have some folks on our subgroups that are making sure that we are including details to our plan, approaches, strategies that will also impact students with complex support needs on both of these goals. First, we're going to be focusing on, or I guess one goal that we started focusing on first was the increasing our number of students with disabilities who access career and technical education programs. And our second goal is to increase access to pre-employment transition services. Arizona unfortunately wasn't able to exhaust all funds for the pre-ed services through the vocational rehabilitation program. So we're hoping to try a few things, and we've done some similar things in both goals, done surveys to our community, collected insight from them on things that we can do to make an impact on these things. We've done some like response, I guess, to these requests. We've done professional developments through this last year, in this coming year as well. We've done some technical assistance guides. We've done kind of like partner sharings. We've created focus groups to collect throughout the year information. We hope to launch actually our first one for the pre-eds this coming week, or we just launched this one this last week actually. And then we are focusing on two important things. One is we launched a transition resource guide to help support this, and a project that is a person-centered planning peer-based facilitator program that where students with disabilities trained through our youth leadership program are turning around and supporting other students with disabilities to use person-centered planning to support their goals in the future. And so with that said, I see my time is up, but those two main goals are the focus of our CBI group, and we anticipate following those up here this coming year.
Great. Thanks so much, Anna, and the wonderful work you all are doing in Arizona. And next up is New Jersey, and Bill, you're on.
Hi, everyone. Bill Freeman, State Coordinator of Secondary Transition at the New Jersey Department of Education in the Office of Special Education. And New Jersey has recently reevaluated our main priority area for our work with our NTAC collaborators. We have decided to move into the idea that we really need to strengthen the systemic and ongoing implementation of transition assessment going on in local school districts for all the students with IEPs. What we're finding is that when we visit local education agencies and we offer assistance on a variety of different things, we often see transition assessment as being a weak link. And that's resulting in post-secondary goals that are often not specific or not written all that well because transition assessment wasn't done all that well. So we have been working with our colleagues at the NTAC-C on an ongoing basis. We're meeting with our core state leadership team through our CTE office here at the Department of Ed, as well as our VR partners. And we have a broad representation on our work group of different state agencies, parents, other organizations. We've been meeting on an ongoing basis to increase our collaboration and our communication. And our next steps include to begin collecting data and information from local school districts on their transition assessment and what's going on or not going on. and see if we need to add membership to our work group. And we hope to develop some new resources, some new professional development activities to make sure that local school staff have what they need to make this systemic and ongoing. And that's about as much time as I have.
Great. Thanks, Bill. Appreciate it. Great work you all are doing in New Jersey. And moving on, our next topical area for updates is looking at statewide systems of professional development. We'll go on to North Carolina, and Beverly, you are on.
Okay, I am here. Hello from North Carolina. I am highlighting our building capacity through developing North Carolina collaborative district level teams goal. This has been our primary goal for a while now, and that's because it takes quite a bit of time to accomplish. Our goal is to train 5 to 10 new collaborative teams each year. We have currently trained 48 teams, and we do this by leveraging some times and locations that are already set and scheduled by our agencies, such as the Exceptional Children Conference and the Career and Technical Education Summer Conference. We also identify our participants with defined readiness criteria, and that includes their willingness to participate and their desire to collaborate. It also includes them identifying a representative from each area: exceptional children, career and technical education, and vocational rehabilitation, to form their core district level team. So at this point, now that we have trained 48 teams, we're really looking at ways now that we can better support those teams, that we can build our community of practice offerings. It's time now for us to kind of review and revise our tools that we're using with our teams. We also are investigating options to better share education and service provision information with families. So we're really hoping to have some conversations with other state teams who have similar goals at the Capacity Building Institute in person in Charlotte this year. And perhaps that will lead to learning some strategies and getting new ideas from each other. So that's our North Carolina update in a nutshell, and I thank you for your time.
Great. Thanks so much, Beverly, and the wonderful work you all are doing in North Carolina. And moving on to Virginia, and Lashana, if you are on, if you want to unmute.
Hello, I am on. Hi, everyone. So first I want to basically point out that we have our headers in the red. We have the previously mentioned goals, highlights, and plans that we mentioned before in black, and then we have our updates in blue. So if you're looking, that's why. So we have two primary goals that we are focused on. We have the age-appropriate transition assessments and collaboration, and collaborative, to provide educators and practitioners with resources. And then our next one is family engagement, and basically engaging the family within the transition process. So the highlights that we have here is that we decided that we were going to use the transition taxonomy, and use the transition taxonomy and create modules, which we have. And if you notice in the blue, we are so excited. The modules with the voiceovers will be completed by the end of March of 2023. And we're planning currently planning our marketing strategies for that. The coordination with local and state agencies and organizations to share marketing resources, etc. If you notice, we have made an update, and we've done a social media campaign to engage families and in transition planning. That was in November. And then we're planning something in February for CTE and Job Shadowing Month. And our team is presenting at VADCT, the state conference on family engagement, and engaging them in, engaging families in the transition planning process. And if you look at the bottom, so we have plans for I cannot speak today. Can't get it out. Sustaining the work and building local capacity. We have community of practice in all 8 of our regions. We have monthly meetings with the state capacity building team. And if you look at the bottom, you can see the logos that represent our diverse representation in our teams. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Lashana, and the wonderful things that are happening in Virginia. Appreciate it. And then we're going to move on, and we have, last but not least, Wisconsin. And Alicia, you're on.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's been so nice to hear everyone's updates. So specifically for Wisconsin, we had 3 goals that we were focusing on this year. The first was to deepen our coaching relationships with federally identified school districts under the special education law IDEA. To do so, we reevaluated the support structure that we use in Wisconsin to support school districts. We have a project in Wisconsin called the Transition Improvement Grant that is used to facilitate sort of those coaching relationships and supports for districts in their continuous improvement process. We've spent the first part of the year really taking a strong look at our new structure and deepening the relationships with school districts. And we've made some really great progress in deepening our relationships with school districts and on their implementation of evidence-based practices, most notably in our largest school district in Wisconsin, which is Milwaukee, which, fun fact, serves nearly a third of the students in the state. So the team is just continuing to evaluate the effectiveness of our model for coaching. And one thing we really want to dive deeper into yet this spring is understanding the balance between our coaching with school districts around the implementation of their strategy and maintaining technical assistance for the rest of the school districts in the state, especially sort of on that universal level. Our second goal was around building the capacity of educators to increase engagement in career and technical education experiences. We have a handful of school districts who have chosen this as one of their intervention strategies, working towards improving outcomes for students with disabilities. We have an online course that has been developed to support this work and was written for a broad audience beyond special educators, really around building in those accommodations and supports to help students with disabilities be successful in those experiences. The course is completed. We've run into some barriers with publishing it on our website, but we are using the content with the school districts that we're working directly with on implementing that strategy. And then lastly, our third goal was to deepen the collaboration across transition partners. We feel really strongly that this is the best progress we've made here in Wisconsin. We have sort of formed a stronger and more broad interagency group that traditionally kind of hone in on Wisconsin work, and we are looking specifically at data and telling data stories. We officially have an integrated data system up and running that includes employment outcome data that for the first time in Wisconsin can be disaggregated across subgroups of people with disabilities. So we have a few different workflows going on around that, where we're looking to tell data stories to sort of fulfill multiple needs, fulfill needs and prioritization across our agencies and funding, et cetera. And then finally, we have a pilot project going on with collaborative groups that we call CCOTs, or County Communities on Transition. We have some targeted support provided to 2 county groups, as well as a specific group that's been formed from Milwaukee Public Schools and specific neighborhoods of Milwaukee, given their size. So that is my time.
Great. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. And I'm going to turn this back over. And I believe we're turning it back over to preparing your team. And it's back to Jen and Brianna.
Thank you, Michael. So we could just go to the next slide. Next up, we're going to talk about that checklist that Jen previously mentioned, and that's the state capacity building checklist. And these are the things that you're going to be able to look at in the month starting tomorrow, February, and then in the coming months in preparation for CBI. Right here, starting in February, it's going to be making sure that your team is pulled together. Are there any people, any voices missing that you want to include? As Connor mentioned, do we have that student and youth voice, parent center voice, if that's appropriate, thinking about your goals and who should be at the table. Another really key thing here is to determine if your team is going to be using a facilitator. That is embedded in the registration process. As a team leader, we will ask you to identify if you do or do not want a facilitator. So going into March, it's a good time to be meeting with your team, doing that pre-assessment tool and reviewing your progress towards your goals. There's going to be some key deadlines during March as well, including that March 31st deadline to get information to Michael about your youth member, if you've got a youth member joining your team.
Okay.
Go ahead, Jen.
So we initially created this checklist just to like the lead up to CBI, but I'll show you in just a second that we're actually making this a year-long checklist, and it's divided up into 3 quarters. So this is mainly about prep for the Institute. So in April, you'll notice that everything is kind of blue, and then March is green. I'm sorry, May is green to go for the Institute. So you'll notice in April, this is the last chance to bring your team together to do the strategic planning pre-assessment that we looked at, look at your progress that you've made on your 2022 goals. The last day to register for the CBI is April 22nd. That is also the final day to get a hotel room within the hotel block. You'll notice that we have links to the CBI registration and the CBI or the hotel kind of smattered throughout here. So you'll be able to get your hotel room and your registration. These links are also within the CBI 2023 placed on our website. A couple of things to bring your attention to. We do have the date for the final team leader prep. That's April 5th. That will be, you can see here that there's another suggestion for making sure your whole team is registered. We will also, like we have in the past, we'll be sending out emails to confirm the people that we have registered for your team, so you can look to see who is there, and then we can you can nudge someone, or we can talk about that when you get those emails. If you're using a facilitator, as always, you'll get an email from me about who that facilitator is. We do suggest that you connect with that facilitator before the CBI, particularly if you have results from the strategic planning pre-assessment, or if you have kind of your goals, ideas of where you might want to start. Additionally, because we're using external facilitators, we also highly recommend that, and we will be helping kind of to navigate this, that your team or you as a leader might want to meet with your ITA person, if you're working with an ITA person, to kind of talk through the information about your team with the facilitator. So, but we'll give you more information about that as we get closer to it. And then, yes, thank you. I think I said registration wrong. Registration is April 22nd. Thank you. And then green means go to the Institute, have fun. As always, split your team members up against up across all of the content sessions, making progress and walking out, hopefully with 2023 goals, using content experts if you want to come into your team members. And as always, we'll have a process to make that easier. And because we're NTAC-C, we love data. There's another nod there to fill out your CBI evaluation. So I'm just going to show you real quick, and then we'll go back to the slides. But you'll see here that this is for February to May, and then we'll have another quarter of things to do from June to September, and then the final quarter is October to January. This again will be coming in that bucket of materials that you'll be getting from Michael.
Thank you, Jen. All right, in the spirit of time, we're going to zoom through these last few. So just a reminder that we have great resources. You should visit our transitionta.org website. You're going to find FAQs coming soon on our CBI landing page and some of these great tools to help your team get prepared. Next slide. Again, visit the website. That's going to give you that landing page. It's going to have links to register. You'll get that information in emails from us. So we hope to see you there. And next slide. An overview of those important deadlines. So remember, Michael Storer, March 31st, we're going to send him your contact information for a youth member of your team. Also for the 31st, the facilitator. If you have a desire for a facilitator, we need to know. We have the final team leader prep in April 5th, and then those registration and room block closing dates, April 22nd. Next slide. If you have any questions, you can contact us. Thank you, everyone. I think that's all.
That is, and thank you
Great.
all for joining us and for presenting today, and all of the NTech folks that have joined us. So can't wait to see you all in May.